What's up, guys? Clayford08 here with another Friday Night Live Crypto with Clay. We got an excellent show tonight. It looks like it's just Crypto Jake and I this evening on voice chat. So if you want to be a part of the voice chat, feel free to join the Discord server in the description below. We definitely will. We definitely would love to talk to anybody else that wants to join the voice server, and your opinion is never stupid. You know, we definitely love hearing different opinions from different locations all around the world. That's the beauty of this platform, you know, being able to say what you want when you want. And it can be completely anonymous if you want. That's really one of the beauties here. And you know, what we're trying to achieve with blockchain technology is decentralization in every aspect of your life. And so if that's something that you're interested in, then this is definitely the platform for you. If you're just starting out with cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology, congratulations. You've just entered a world that is going to magnify every aspect of your life, and you will definitely be able to do things much simpler in the future using blockchain technology. It is going to revolutionize the way we live our lives on a day-to-day basis. Everything that you do is eventually going to be housed on a blockchain, and it is going to be a beautiful thing because decentralization is the way to live. You know, not having people tell you what to do with your money and being able to access your own funds at any time, day and night, 24/7. It's incredible. And once you start living this way, you never want to go back to the way it was before. Banks make you sick at that point. And so it's really, really incredible what you start to see whenever you start to decentralize every aspect of your life. And I'm really excited to bring tonight's podcast to you guys. So tonight we have Crypto Jake. Go ahead and say hello, dude.
Hey everybody, you looking good on the live feed, dude.
Thanks, man. All right, so let's just jump right into the first topic of this evening, shall we?
Yeah, man, I can't wait.
All right, so taking a look at the cryptocurrency market altogether, over the past few weeks, we have seen a huge market downtrend. And last week we discussed with a lot of naysayers as to what the reason was behind this market downtrend. There were a lot of people saying, you know, it's the summer and that's the reason for the market downtrend. There were a lot of people saying, oh, there was just a major sell-off because, you know, that's what happens every time we hit a new all-time high. And I'm sure that played a small part in what was going on with the market, but the real reason was because of the uncertainty with Bitcoin. Anytime Bitcoin has some, you know, potential reason to do poorly, the rest of the market suffers, and that's exactly what we were seeing. The potential split of Bitcoin into two separate currencies is a huge deal, and a lot of big investors were pulling their money out because they were scared of what was going to happen. This week, as we ushered in segregated witness to Bitcoin, we saw the price go up. And it was as soon as we hit 80% on signaling for segregated witness, the miners that is, that we saw the price start going back up on Bitcoin. And look at what else happened. The rest of the market started going back up as well. It's incredible how that works. And we discussed this last week, and people were naysaying, like, no, Clay, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And this week, I have the chance to prove it to everybody, because as soon as segregated witness was implemented on the blockchain, we started seeing a rise in the market. So that's a beautiful thing, and I'm really excited that this is occurring. Jake, what's your take on this, man?
Yeah, I think a lot of uncertainty led up to kind of the crash we saw the other week. Now that we're in the clear, seems like it gave the signal for the bulls to take off, but I'm still a little hesitant, and I kind of feel like I might have missed the boat. I was waiting for a smaller bottom, and I'm still thinking that we haven't really crossed the threshold into the new highs. So I'm not sure if the support is really what people think it is.
Yeah, so there are a lot of predictions about a $5,000 Bitcoin by the end of this year, and I definitely think that's a possible outcome, but it's really hard to say at this point because we still have a lot of things to look forward to over the next few months. So SegWit 2x will not be implemented until September of this year. For those of you that don't know what SegWit 2x is, it's segregated witness plus a block size change to 2 megabytes. And that could potentially cause some problems for the blockchain as well. What's up, Joe? You have your theories, but did you review that volume chart on Bitcoin I posted to you? No, Joe, I didn't get a chance to look at that at work today, unfortunately. But if you want to briefly tell me what you're describing in chat, I would love to talk about it, man. That's what this place is for. And let's take a look at the current 4-hour chart on Bitcoin right now. So if you take a look at the MACD, we're currently on the low side, signaling a potential buy. I definitely like to look at all three of the indicators, the MACD, the CCI, and the RSI. Right now, the RSI is showing a little high for me, but looking at the CCI and the MACD, those are definitely buy signals for me, and I think that we could potentially see more of an uptrend, and so those are really, really good indicators for me that the bulls are definitely out right now, and they're wanting more Bitcoin, and they're excited to see segregated witness implemented, because that means that there will not be a hard fork, there will not be two separate currencies that they have to worry about, and it's going to be a lot smoother of a transition than we were initially seeing.
So you're saying we're in the clear?
I'm not necessarily saying we're in the clear. There's still a lot of things that could happen once segregated witness is actually implemented on the blockchain. So right now, the miners have just signaled for segregated witness, but it hasn't actually taken place on the blockchain. Anything can happen. Now, if you take a look at Litecoin, who implemented segregated witness on their blockchain, that was a very smooth transition, but that doesn't mean it's going to be the same outcome for Bitcoin, so we still have to be wary of that. However, the thing is all of the miners that have signaled for segregated witness are going to continue mining on the blockchain that implements segregated witness. They have come to that consensus. So even if there is a chain split, all of the miners are prepared to be mining on the specific currency that is using segregated witness. So even if we do have a chain split, one is going to die off immediately, which is really good news.
So whose column do you think this segregated witness is a win in?
Say that again?
The segregated witness, is this a win for the miners, or do you think this is a win for the greater community?
I think this is definitely a win for everybody, because a hard fork would have been terrible for everyone, including the miners. Now, the miners have definitely been the ones that have implemented this change, but if you know anything about BIP 91, okay, Joe is saying the news that the soft fork was more likely was the catalyst for the pump leading to the dump. There was huge selling at the highs. Should be some selling here soon this evening based on current volume. Selling here at Bitcoin 26.95. It'll probably be down closer to 2600 before 10 p.m. I mean, it could definitely go down a little bit more, but I think as far as the whole, people are very excited to see segregated witness implemented on the blockchain. So I think we're definitely still in an uptrend market. There might be a little bit of sell-off, just like there is every time there's a high of the week. But I definitely think that we're definitely I definitely think we're going to see some more buying throughout the next week until, of course, we reach the new plateau of what's going to happen with the actual implementation of segregated witness. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
What's up, Tutrock? How you doing, man?
Thanks.
Welcome to the voice chat, dude. Benjamin Swab asked, want to look at BitShares charts when and if you have time? Benjamin, I don't know if we'll have time for the BitShares charts, but you know, anything is possible. If we have some extra free time at the end of today's episode, I'll be sure to take a look at that, man. Good question, though. I might start doing that. I might start reserving a space at the end of each podcast to take a look at things that you guys want me to look at. Like Joe asked if I had looked at his thing that he sent me earlier, and unfortunately I just didn't have the time because I was at work all day. And you know, Benjamin asking about the BitShares chart. It might be cool to add that at the end of the section each Friday night. So I'll take a look into that, guys. All right, so that's the market for this week. We also saw a huge upswing in Ethereum as well, but we're starting to see a sell-off in Ethereum. People are taking their profits on that upswing with Ethereum. We were seeing a huge resistance level at about the 240 mark, I believe, is what it was, and it never really got beyond that, unfortunately. So we didn't see a really large upswing like we did with Bitcoin, but we definitely got to see some highs of the week for Ethereum, so that was a good thing. Do you follow the regular markets? Microsoft earnings news last night was the market example similar to what happened with Bitcoin. I actually don't follow the stock exchanges. I do a little bit on the side. I do have a few stocks that I invest in, but for the most part, I am not watching that market regularly like I do with cryptocurrencies every single day. You know, with cryptocurrencies, I can easily just go on CoinMarketCap and look at any chart that I want to really quickly. And, you know, it's not necessarily a trustworthy method. So for things that I really want to take a look at, I use coinigy. But it's just so simple to take a look at things on the coin market, the crypto market. So that's what I like to do. All right, let's move on to the next topic, guys. All right, so Jake, did you hear about the... Wow, why is my camera doing that? Hang on, guys. Sorry about that. All right. Jake, did you hear about the Ethereum hacks this week? Did you hear about the people that lost quite a bit of money?
Of course, 32 million worth of Ether.
That was just one hack.
Damn.
Yeah, so we actually had two hacks that occurred this week. The Parity multi-signature wallet and the CoinDash. Was it CoinDash? The CoinDash ICO.
Yep, that's the one.
Yep.
7 million was taken from that one.
Yep. So do you understand the differences between the two hacks?
Definitely. I'm not even sure if the hack is the appropriate term to use here.
Yeah, for the CoinDash ICO, that's not really technically a hack. However, The person did steal quite a bit of money from investors, and it's really unfortunate that it happened, but it's a great example of why people need to be a lot more cautious with their money and a lot more responsible personally. And Charlie Lee, the creator of Litecoin, brought up a very valid point about the Parity wallet. He said if the creator of Solidity, Gavin Wood, cannot write a secure multi-sig wallet in Solidity, pretty much confirms Ethereum is hacker paradise. And he said Gav is not the person that updated the original code. My main point is that writing smart contracts with Solidity is error prone. Be careful. So when you see somebody that is so prolific in the crypto space say something like this, you really need to pay attention, because essentially what he's saying is the creator of this specific language that was used to write this wallet can't even secure his own code. And if that's the case, pretty much anybody using this code is going to have a really fucking difficult time securing that code. And it makes it very, very prone and susceptible to hacking. Now that's a huge problem when we're talking about money, because money is not something that you want to be insecure. $70 million is a shit ton of money.
Right. There's a group of the white hat hackers claiming that they're still holding a balance of 70 million worth of the hacked coins that they're going to supposedly return. I don't know if anybody's got that money back yet. So this could be maybe $100 million hack.
Yeah. It's a big deal. And I think people need to be aware of these things. And it really says a very large deal about all of these ICOs that are occurring, because people are just throwing their money into these ICOs, like thinking that they're gonna make a quick buck. Everybody is like, oh my god, if I invest in an ICO, I'm going to immediately double my money as soon as that token is issued. And that's not the case, especially if it gets hacked like this. You know, this is a really great example, but this happened last summer with the DAO hack, and there are a lot of similarities to this hack and that one. You know, people throwing their money into something that was really hyped, and their money getting stolen by a hacker. Like, it's really important to understand that once you put your money into these funds to invest in ICOs and things of that nature, that money is no longer yours. It's a part of that development team, and they don't even have to issue tokens to you. Legally, they don't have to give you anything. It says it in almost every single white paper. It says that they do not have to give you anything. Like, people put their money in these funds just realizing that the development team is going to give them tokens, going to issue out tokens. But essentially, like, if you take a look at the EOS white paper, it says, like, we are not responsible for your money after you put it in this fund. Like, they are very clear about that. Like, do you guys remember seeing that in the white paper?
Yeah, all bets are off, basically.
That's essentially what it said. And so people need to be a lot more responsible. And this is a very high learning curve, because whenever we're talking about technicalities, a lot of people don't really know what they're doing in this space yet. It is a very technical field, and there is a learning curve. But once you start understanding those boundaries and how to secure your funds, it becomes a lot easier as time goes on.
Yeah, we've definitely seen how a single keystroke error can cause either havoc on the market or a really sloppy, one little line of code issues, it might lead to millions of dollars in loss.
Absolutely.
I hope this doesn't doesn't bode well for the industry. I'm hoping that these are just growing pains, but clearly people need to be a little more diligent with their coding and compiling.
Absolutely. And that's another great point that you bring up, Jake. Like, these developers are throwing these ICOs out there like willy-nilly. They're like, "Oh, dude, if I get a token out there, you know, I can get the funding that I need to create a good blockchain." But they're not even thinking about the coding that they need to accomplish for the smart contracts themselves. If they're not making a secure smart contract, then how can we trust them to make a secure blockchain? And this kind of goes back to what Charlie Lee was saying. Like, apparently it's really difficult to develop secure smart contracts on this platform, and that's really unfortunate. So for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, this platform was actually created by the Ethereum Foundation. It is a brand new language developed specifically for developers to create smart contracts on the blockchain, on their blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain.
You're talking about parity, right?
Well, yeah, Solidity, but
Oh, Solidity, sorry.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's becoming a real problem, and people are losing money because of it, and that gives cryptocurrencies a really bad name. It gives us a bad rep. Everybody involved in cryptocurrencies has to suffer because of these things too, and it just makes it that much harder to spread awareness, because whenever you mention cryptocurrencies or Bitcoin or things like that, everybody automatically associates it to three things: money laundering, illegal drugs on the dark web, or hacking. You know, all of those hackers that try to what is it called? The hackers that try and corrupt your files so that you can't access them.
The ransomware type
Yeah,
hackers.
ransomware. Thank you. I couldn't think of the word. Yeah, so people associate it with those three things, and it's a shame because it's so much more than that.
Yeah, but most people just can contact cryptocurrencies by that ransomware.
That's true, and that in itself is unfortunate as well, because hackers hackers should be the ones that want to make sure that it's coming to fruition, because if they don't, then their cryptocurrencies that they've stolen from these people aren't going to be worth anything.
Seems like there's a lot of flies buzzing around Ethereum and any stories around Ethereum.
Dollar Vigilante now pumping your EOS, also a ETH derivative that was developed by one of the STEEM developers. Joe, what are you talking about, man? I'm really interested in that. I'm a big fan of EOS myself. It's created by Dan Larimer. I'm a big fan of EOS, so I'd love to have you elaborate on that last statement.
Seems like ETH has had a lot of stumbling, blocks along the way.
It really has, and over the past few weeks, we've seen more and more of that. Now, with the next hard fork that they implement, there's going to be a lot of great changes, and it's going to be able to usher in Casper a lot sooner. Casper is essentially going to usher in proof of stake for their blockchain, and that's going to be a really, really great change. Because right now, there was actually something this week that talked about how the current Ethereum difficulty for mining has shot up exponentially over the past month causing a lot of miners to not even be able to take profit off of what they're trying to accomplish, because the difficulty is so high that their power costs are more than what they're able to mine with their GPUs. And so there was a protocol that they're looking into to be able to extend the proof of work algorithm for another year, so that they can develop Casper a little bit longer and make sure that it's good to go before they actually implement it on the blockchain. And what that will do is lower the difficulty so that miners can actually continue mining this over the next year. Go to Dollar Vigilante's YouTube. I'm not going to do that right now, man. If I wasn't streaming right now, I definitely would. All right, let's move on to the next topic. All right, so billionaires who bet on blockchains. I saw this beautiful article a couple of days ago. This was written on July 16th. And I actually wrote an article on Steemit about this after I read it, because this is really interesting to me. Once we start seeing billionaires invest their hard-earned money into spaces, you can bet that the rest of the market is going to go up, because people see billionaires as these incredibly smart investors, and they are. They wouldn't get where they are if they weren't smart investors. So once markets start seeing billionaires enter their money into those funds, a lot of people, a lot of smaller investors start putting their money in the same location.
It's like the flare goes up, when the big guys start coming into the game.
Absolutely. And just this week, we've seen 3 new billionaires that have pretty much said they're going to be investing, or they have invested some of their money into blockchain technology. So that is really, really, really good
do
stuff.
They bet on the blockchains, or do they invest in the cryptocurrencies?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do they just bet or gamble on the blockchains, or do they invest and buy parts of cryptocurrencies, more or less?
So all of the investors that I've seen, all of the billionaires that have started investing in blockchains, have invested in very specific startup projects that they're backing, essentially. And once they put their name to that project, they're pretty much like branding that project as their own. Because none of these guys have invested in the same projects, as far as I know, and none of them have invested in the large projects that we're seeing right now. So Ethereum and Bitcoin and things like that, they're not throwing their money into those. They're throwing them into startup funds. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to those specific projects and where they go. Because, I don't know, I'm thinking about putting some of my money into some of these projects that they've actually invested in. But my whole point with this specific topic is that once we start seeing billionaires investing their money and millionaires investing their money in things, we really start to see a lot more mass adoption of those. And so I wanted to bring this to everyone's attention, because we could be seeing the very beginning of mass adoption here, with all of these really large investors coming into the market. Once they start flooding the market with their money, the market cap is going to go up. What's up, guys?
I'm still waiting for Bezos to get in.
Why is that?
I'm just saying, once his name's associated with the next big crypto, I think, like you're saying, it'll be that mass adoption. It'll be the flare going up that this is for real.
Yeah, definitely. I think once we start seeing a lot of a lot more of these large investors come into the market, there's definitely going to be a price rise in the market cap. Right now, the market cap is still extremely low, and it's a lot lower than it was at the end of last month. Last month, it reached like $110 billion, $112 billion. Right now, does anybody know what the current market cap is? Is it around like $83 billion or something like that?
For cryptosphere as a whole, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I heard that figure thrown out this week. But, you know, with the whole market going up and down nearly 40, 50%, it's crazy how the whole market can shrink as much as it does.
Absolutely.
I mean, right now on CoinMarketCap, it's 92 million, or 92 billion, excuse me.
Really?
Yep.
So it's up a lot more than it was yesterday as well. Wow.
Still like a drop in the bucket, don't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because this market is so volatile, we're going to see these huge dips and swings in the market. That's just a part of the game with this being such early technology and uncertainty, especially with what could happen to Bitcoin, you know. But again, like I was talking about earlier, I think we're going to see a lot of change in the market in the coming months, so it'll be interesting to watch it all play out, though. So yeah, that's billionaires entering into the market. I'm really excited to see what happens to those specific projects that these billionaires enter into, because if they flop, like that's going to look really poorly on them.
Yeah, I think Joe in the chat room was saying something all about his theory and the recent upswing related to billionaires. I think that's what he was talking about.
Oh, okay.
Theory. I'm sure he'll maybe expand a little more on that later, right, Joe?
Yeah, man, that'd be interesting.
Question is just like our friend Torek was saying, you know, what exactly are these billionaires' position? Are they going to get into the market and buy Bitcoin like everybody else, or are they just piling their money into specific projects?
I think they're just putting their money into these very specific projects. I don't think very many billionaires hold cryptocurrencies as far as Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ethereum, things like that. I think they're backing these specific projects. Oh, Joe said not exactly, Jake.
Yeah, let's see if he has anything to expand on.
Yeah, dude, Joe, tell us what you were talking about, man. I'm really intrigued. All right, let's move on to the next topic. All right. Russia prepares to legalize ICOs. Now, this is really, really interesting to me because they plan to legalize ICOs, but they haven't even regulated cryptocurrencies as a whole yet. So they're kind of like they haven't even dipped their toes into the water yet. And now they're jumping head first because legalizing and regulating ICOs is going to be a huge pain in the ass. For every single ICO that's out there on the market, I can't even begin to tell you how many ICOs there are on the market, and they want to regulate all of them. I just don't see this happening the way they want to see it happen. It's going to be very difficult for them to regulate these things. Also, just regulation as a whole, I'm kind of leaning more towards the idea that any regulation at all for any means is a bad thing. Regulating things like ICOs really takes away the capitalism behind it. You know, when people lose their money on these ICOs, yeah, it's a terrible thing, but people need to learn to be more responsible, kind of like we were talking about earlier. You know, I used this analogy in one of my other videos. You wouldn't leave your wallet at a table unattended at a restaurant and get up and go to the restroom, you wouldn't do that. You would secure your wallet in your back pocket, get up and go to the restroom. It's the same exact thing. People need to be more responsible with their own money.
Yeah, this even applies to traditional financial, banks. We live in the world now where we think everything is insured, and the consumers basically leave everything on the government's doorstep and say, well, the government will step in if anything goes wrong. I'm sure I'm okay. But, maybe we really ought to have embraced a free market system, even with traditional banks, where, you put your money into a bank that goes under, you didn't do your due diligence, maybe you deserve to lose your deposits.
Absolutely. Joe, to answer your question, I was definitely around whenever the housing market collapsed in 2007. And I definitely agree that the stock market is currently in a bubble. We're seeing highs that we've never seen before, and that's usually a sign of a bubble. Now, a lot of people try to associate that same bubble with the cryptocurrency market, and I just have to respectfully disagree. I think people are fleeing these other markets that see those signs and trying to put their money into cryptocurrencies, which will be really interesting to see as well over the next few years, especially if the US dollar starts tanking, because people are still starting to pull their money out of the petrodollar. And what I mean by that is countries are starting, or I shouldn't say starting, countries are stopping their use of the US dollar to buy oil all around the globe. And with that happening, that's going to have a huge damper on what happens to the US dollar, because the US dollar is essentially only backed up by oil right now. There is nothing else backing the US dollar. And
Yep.
with countries stopping their use of the US dollar to buy oil, the US dollar is just going to tank. What were you going to say, Jake?
I was just going to say, it's like they use the American dollar as a means to export their inflation, right? So out of their borders. And as the whole global landscape changes and the reserve currency becomes in question, these, all the developing nations maybe decide they want to cut loose. It's definitely not going to spell anything good for the USD.
Yeah, absolutely. So
If we see even the smallest flight, away from traditional markets into crypto, the market cap of crypto is so small, like it could blow up overnight if there was any, mass exodus out of the markets, and even a small fraction went into crypto.
Oh, Joe, I'm not saying that mass acceptance is a sure sign of a bubble. That's not what I'm saying at all. I don't think that the cryptocurrency market is in a bubble. That's not what I'm trying to say.
The traditional markets definitely are. I think everyone's given the illusion that the economy is doing great, because I think most people look at the stock markets as an indicator of how the economy is doing, and it's flying higher than ever. But the fundamentals of the economy don't reflect that at all. So I think it's a bit of like a bait and switch. They're slowly creeping away at our savings. And every other way, and then they say, well, here, look at the stock market. It's higher and better than it's ever been. We're doing great, everybody. Don't even look at what's behind the magician, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing that a lot of people don't understand is that sometimes these bubbles that burst make the rich richer and the poor poorer. A lot of people don't realize that. They think that everybody loses whenever the bubbles burst, and that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, wealth is never lost. It's merely transferred.
That's true. What you are thinking is what the masses are thinking? What do you mean, man?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if, Joe, you think that Clay is suggesting that we are not in the bubble with the normal markets, or we are in the bubble. What are you trying to say?
Yeah, I'm not sure what you're trying to get at, Joe.
I think we can all agree that the markets are in a bubble. Real estate is in a bubble. Everything is in a bubble. We have a massive debt load and liabilities that they're not conceivably going to be paid off, right? Not even with generations ahead of us willing to pay for it. It's a giant Ponzi scheme ready to come crashing down.
Bursting bubbles are good for the poor, actually. I shouldn't have said poor. What I meant was the middle class. But I don't think bubbles bursting are good for the poor at all.
I mean, if we use the 2008 like the market crisis as an example, what that showed is that the systemic risk to even the global markets and how much spillover it has into everyone's lives. Right? There's just so much interconnection on the markets that I do think, like, you're right. I think it does affect the middle class, but in particularly people who do have some kind of savings or a mutual fund, or they have a pension or a company pension or whatever it may be. That's what we saw in 2008 when everything comes crashing down or has the potential to come crashing down. It might take everything with it, and that's where the bailouts or the bail-ins by the government come in, because it's like, do you let the whole house come tumbling down? Like, I'd love the idea that it would somehow, the market would return to reason, and then we'd find our way, into the light. But if this just liquidates everybody's lives and everybody's safety net, and there's almost nothing to pick up from, it can have disastrous effects. And I mean, it's maybe a hard pill to swallow. Maybe it's something we do have to do. Maybe we do have to let these too big to fail banks fail, right? Maybe that's what needs to be done. But at the moment, I don't think the populations want that. People want to have the government come in as a backstop and guarantee their pensions and their livelihoods.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, can I just interject a little bit of a counterpoint here? It kind of goes against what you guys are talking about.
What's up?
So the idea that, the banking industry and all that stuff is kind of a house of cards, and it only gets that way when there is no regulation, when there's no checks kept on the greed that is involved in that. And so that's where regulation comes in. It can play a really strong safeguard against out-of-control greed, which is what led to the 2008 housing crisis, which was there was a lot of greed, and so a lot of people opened up the lending and allowed more lending to go through to people who were not qualified to have houses, to a point where the housing market got so out of control where anyone with a pulse could get a loan. And that is what brought the entire economy down in 2008, is that bubble finally burst where there was just too many people not being able to pay their mortgages, and it all just collapsed. And that's where regulation can come in, and you can stop that. And that's where, like, what transpired after that 2008 collapse was a lot of banking regulation that made it so banks now have to have stress tests, and they have to have capital reserves in order to handle a big collapse again.
KJ.
I'd have to disagree a little bit. I think there was regulation in the first place that gave the banks the incentive to lend to people who were unqualified.
Exactly.
It was the regulation in the first place that led to the issues. The government insisting that they need to give everybody loans, or everybody needs to afford and own their own house, and the government made it possible.
Yep. Well, they actually made a policy about that. They also implemented the Glass-Steagall Act that, was around during the Great Depression. The Clinton administration actually did that, and that opened up another doorway for people to buy on margin and things like that. KJ, I think you're confusing opposite sides here, man. It's actually the regulation that caused the housing market collapse in 2007.
How so? How did regulation cause the housing market collapse?
The government stepped in and told these large banks, which were essentially owned by the government, by the way, that they needed to start offering out more loans to more people, and the Fed raised the the loan rates, essentially, by bringing interest rates down and offering these loans that people couldn't afford. That was definitely the U.S. government. That was not the banks themselves. Does that make sense, dude?
Honestly, this has been a hotly debated topic in financial circles, for years. And, I'm sure people, it usually does boil down to, greed versus, unbridled, versus the regulation, right? Was it greed, or was it the government regulations that provided the incentive for the banks to get into this kind of shaky loan business?
Yeah. KJ, I will always side on the deregulation point. Like, I think regulation is always bad, and if you look throughout history, it would support that claim. The mortgages themselves weren't the cause of the bubble, though.
It was the securities that were backed by the mortgages, though, right?
Yeah.
It was the fact... Yeah.
No, it was that all mortgages were bundled up. That was not a regulation. That was greed. That was people profiting off of shit mortgages.
Right, but the regulator was there, looking over their shoulder, watching them do it.
Those are dark markets. There is no regulation of derivatives, or there wasn't at that time.
It was definitely due to regulation. And, I mean, this is something, though, that is by far a opinion-based topic. And
yeah,
KJ,
this is a philosophical argument about how you deal with this, for sure.
Yeah, Joe, I'm assuming you have your own opinion in this as well. But at the end of the day, we're all going to have a separate opinion on this because it affected us all in a different way. But I always look at regulation as a bad thing. Regulation is what causes us not to prosper.
Yeah, the whole books have been written about this topic, so I'm sure we could probably debate this back and forth quite a bit.
Absolutely. But yeah, so with this regulation that Russia is planning to implement with ICOs and regulating cryptocurrencies as a whole, KJ, I'm assuming you're on the side of this is a good thing for their country. Am I right?
No, not in the crypto space. I think that crypto is a new enough technology that it should still basically be the Wild West, where there's not money rules because you need to let it foster and figure out where it goes. And then when there's abuses, that's when people can come in. Because, see, where I view regulation as being positive is that essentially, when people make their own bad decisions, that's fine. But when the information isn't there for you to make an educated guess, like earlier you talked about the idea that, if a bank that you have your money with goes under, that's your fault for not doing due diligence. You're making the assumption that that bank is going to be forthcoming with truthful information to the public. And I think that on a lot of cases, when those banks fail like that, they are not being forthright with true information about their current status or what they're doing with your money or how their financials are. And so that's where regulation can come in and kind of rein in that to say, we're going to try and provide some sort of a rule set that you have to adhere to so we can most likely, not guarantee, but increase the odds that you don't fail. And it's just how I view it. I view it as a way to protect people from things that they cannot physically or any way get information on.
Yeah, but do you think it's right that you have to pay more in taxes than you earn in interest on a savings account because of that insurance, quote unquote?
Yeah. I mean, it's an insurance.
Yeah, But what is a savings account used for?
Well, that really is the economy. That's the Federal Reserve then that you can place blame on. I don't have any opinion on like their stuff, to be honest. Like
This is all
they just set a
regulation,
rate that's
though,
good
man.
for the. They
This
set
is-
a rate that they view as good to grow the economy in whatever way, and then you make the decision: do you want to store your money in a savings account, a checking account, put it in investments like gold, silver, whatever? Keep it in your mattress. Like those are all consumer choices, and that's where the market decides. The Fed is just part of the market, and they set the bank rates, and then you make your choice where to put your money. A savings account, just because it's called savings account, doesn't mean it has to be for saving money long term. That's how traditionally it's viewed, because traditionally interest rates have been high, so you could earn a good rate in the savings account, but that's not the case anymore. At least not right now, anyway.
Because of regulation.
No, that's a central bank. That's not a regulation. That's them setting monetary policy.
Where do interest rates come from? Where do all
Federal
interest
Reserve.
rates- Exactly. Which is...
But that's not a regulation. That's a central bank. That's a big difference there.
True, but still very suspect, that bank.
No, but like a centralized bank that sets the regulations on interest rates.
No, they set the literal interest rate, not a regulation on the interest rate.
That's still technically a regulation, man.
I don't agree with that, but
I think we're just arguing semantics here, guys. For sure, we think we all recognize the Fed's role in controlling interest rates and therefore the actual market and the whole economy.
Absolutely. So the idea that regulation can be a good thing is, I don't know, that's...
So I have a question for you about regulation. This has nothing to do with finance, but if regulation is bad, do you view that what the EPA does about restricting pollution from factories as a bad thing?
Absolutely.
Really? You'd prefer that some industry, like upstream from where you get your water, let's say, can dump whatever the fuck they want into the water that's going into where you're...
Can't do that. That's where private property rights come in. They don't have a right to dump on your private property. And your
They're
private
not.
property rights.
They're dumping on their property
Right,
that
but-
feeds into the water table.
Right, so therefore you can make a pretty quickly you can draw the argument that is technically your property. That as soon as because it's not completely isolated to their own little hectare of land, it's still it seeps into yours, and therefore they are responsible. I'd like to think
Bingo.
as a
That's
reason-
exactly
get into
why
that.
you need a regulation. That exact concept is why we regulate pollution, is because they can dump on their own property, but with the exception of when it intrudes on other people's stuff. That's where regulation is super important.
I think you're not giving enough credit to the citizens, man. You think that citizens would just be okay with these large corporations polluting their waters?
I don't think that they are right now, and there is regulation.
Well,
Right.
because people aren't aware. And I think we need to educate the public, and people need to understand what their rights are, what the property rights are. And I think in a society with people a little more aware, would take these guys to the cleaners and prevent them from doing that. And with all the regulation in the world, look at all the all the issues and spills and contamination we already experience. Like, regulation clearly is not working all that great.
Yeah, but you think opening it up in general would be better?
Absolutely. Because
Okay, so when?
all right, let's see. We would be more profitable as a human race if there weren't regulations, but the people themselves, would be a lot more open about their stances, and I don't think that people would allow pollution in waters on their land. I think that they would fight against that. And the thing is people could boycott those companies that are creating the pollution. You're not giving enough credit to the actual citizen. you are assuming that nobody could do anything about a corporation that is polluting. And I think that that is incredibly naive. I like to give people a little bit more credit than that. You know, I don't need a government to tell me what is and is not moral. I know what's moral. I know that polluting a stream that people depend on for livelihood is not moral. And I would definitely fight against that personally.
Yeah, and then you look at the larger effects, so you regulate within the United States, but then that really just sends business to less regulated markets. So that guy who would be polluting here decides he's going to, take his operations to China, where the regulations are, much smaller, and he can dump freely there. So really, yeah, we're regulating, maybe protecting ourselves locally, but it still doesn't solve the problem. You're just kicking the can onto the other side of the continent.
Yeah. Does that make sense, KJ?
No, I get your argument, but I don't agree. I think that truly, like in that scenario, in a global economy, even if they didn't move, let's say it's a polluter in California. They pollute some water source in California. This is just an easier concept to deal with in financial regulations. But so they pollute some source in California. Do you think that people on the East Coast as a whole are going to give a shit about that water source in California?
Absolutely.
I don't have faith in humans to care that much about something that's not in their face.
Okay.
I think that...
Really?
Yeah, really.
I can give you an example from this year that would prove you wrong to that.
All right.
Flint, Michigan.
Okay.
Okay, look at how many people came in and helped. And these are private entities, not the government. The government didn't solve shit for Flint, Michigan. Look at how many private entities sent water to Flint, Michigan so that they could have clean water.
Yeah, that was
do you
definitely...
think people around the nation didn't care about Flint, Michigan? I think that right there proves you wrong.
I don't think that it does. I think that was like a mini humanitarian crisis where it was more in your face that it was all over the news. Like, I think that if you're talking about like a rural industry who's polluting not a monster city like Flint, their water, you're not going to have enough people caring. They'll just put these little things out in the middle of nowhere where maybe 100 people get sick and die.
I just disagree with you, man. I think that there are a lot more people that care than you are thinking. I think that there are a lot more moral people out there that feel more obligated to do these things, to help others. And so I brought up a point to a friend today because I was actually having this conversation with a friend at work today about regulations. And the thing is back in the early 1900s, we didn't really have very many regulations in the workplace. Are you familiar with this, KJ?
Yeah.
So a lot of people died in the workplace because there weren't any regulations set there. But it wasn't the government that stepped in to make sure that security came to the workplace, that safety came to the workplace. It was actually the people that banded together and created what are now called unions. And eventually the government stepped in and created these regulations. But it was actually the people that came together first and started setting up safety precautions in the workplace. So I like to give a lot more credit to the people than the regulators. I think that's another great example of people coming together to set up safety nets for one another. I guess the people in China don't give a shit then. China is a cesspool. Nah, man, China's just capitalistic. They like to earn money, bro. So yeah, let's bring that conversation about regulation to a close. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so I was appalled after I read this stupid article. Texas congressman, cryptocurrencies must not enable terrorists. Essentially what this congressman was saying was cryptocurrencies are only there to promote terrorism and spend on the dark market. So people are only using these for unjust causes. And we need to step in and regulate that. We need to step in and make sure that they can't use these for that. Now, that is probably one of the most ignorant things I've read all week. Because we were talking about all of the great use cases that are coming to blockchain technology earlier. Health industries are starting to use blockchain technology. We're starting to use blockchain technology for the music industry, for the entertainment industry, for going to the grocery store, for whatever you can imagine the cryptocurrency industry can be used for. It's being used for. Virtual reality, gaming, prize pools, what have you. And so for somebody like this that has the standing that he has to come out and say something so ignorant just really infuriates me, because he has a platform to stand on and say the things that he's saying, and by saying this, people hear it and immediately soon assume that all cryptocurrencies are bad and they're being used for terroristic things. But the thing is terrorists are using the US dollar to fund their causes. Terrorists are using other things to fund their projects and their organizations. So cryptocurrencies don't have anything to do with terrorists doing what terrorists are going to do.
Yeah, I think the intelligence agencies probably have more to do with funding, training, arming, and putting these mercenary armies into these proxy wars, or these proxy ways of ejecting other leaders, by force. So I find it hilarious that a senator is going to suggest that crypto has something to do with it. Meanwhile, if anybody studies this a little deeper, will learn that most of these terrorist organizations get their funding either through Saudi sheiks or the intelligence agencies looking after them. The famous John McCain meeting the Syrian rebels, that whole meme.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting. So Osama bin Laden was actually trained and armed by us. I know that's kind of common knowledge now, but for a while, a lot of people didn't know that. Osama bin Laden was trained by the United States military. It's just incredible that it's 2017 and people still think like this. We need to inform people like this. In fact, I'm from the state of Texas, and I kind of want to write this congressman and say, hey, I'd like to inform you a little bit about what you were discussing openly to the rest of the United States. I want you to know that you were highly incorrect in your statement. And I need you to know why. Because by spreading this misinformation, you're putting a bad rap on things that you don't even understand.
This could be part of a larger meme. I'm sure some people have heard of what they call the domestic terrorists or the homegrown terrorists. You know, people who, for instance, you know, embrace the ideologies of the founding fathers, embrace freedom, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, on and on. Those guys are now being labeled as extremists or nationalists or far right wing, whatever have yous, right? So I feel like maybe this, you know, him vilifying crypto is probably in that same vein. You know, anybody who is for freedom, for self-determination, they're now giving him the crooked terrorist eye. You know, they're trying to look at you suspiciously, wondering, you know, what you're up to, because they don't want anybody upsetting, you know, their apple cart.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate that it's coming to that. This kind of coincides too with that new bill that they're trying to pass, that you have to claim any cryptocurrencies that you have whenever you enter or exit the nation. Because
Yeah, like,
they think that you're going to use it for terroristic reasons. Like, what the fuck is that? How is me telling you, claiming what I have in cryptocurrencies at the border, going to help you in any way?
Yeah, there was even the debate about, yeah, you have to give your Facebook account and your password to the United States that they can look at it and, yeah, let you enter the country.
oh yeah, I've been grilled by border agents before too. Like if you're bringing something across the border and they want to know how much to tax you on it. Like I used to import a lot of cars, and you know, you bring the car across the border, they want to know what you paid for it. You know, they're not just going to take you at your word or even what little receipt you might have. They want to know all the details. Where did you find it? You know, basically, they have at computer stations in the back. This is my experience. They bring you into their computer station room. They sit you down and they say, "Yo, show us the ad or show us your emails, correspondence with the seller. Show us your online information." And they stand over you, insisting you log in and show them everything. And this is just my own little experience dealing with border agents.
It really is a shame, though, that it's coming to that, because, I mean, eventually, the U.S. government is definitely going to learn how to track these things, and that is going to be a really sad day. All of these people that have been getting away with not paying taxes, they're eventually going to have to pay taxes. But I highly encourage everybody to pay their taxes at the rate that they're required to pay their taxes. I don't encourage anybody to break the law, but in the same note, we as citizens have the right to vote on these laws that get passed to regulate or deregulate things like this in the market. And I will, in the same breath, encourage people to make sure that they inform their senators and their representatives that they don't want this type of regulation.
I think they view it as competition. I think they see crypto as potentially breaking up their little party. And I think now they're starting to scramble to button it down.
Yeah.
I think it's simpler than that, honestly. I just think there's a lot of senators and people in that level of government that are older and they just don't have a lot of technical background, and they just hear there's some currency that terrorists can use or drug dealers can use, and they get all worked up about it. And it's kind of the same with cryptography as well. Like, you get the same arguments there, and they just have no fundamental understanding that cryptography is what backs the internet and allows all kinds of things. You know,
What about cryptography, though?
like, people want to have backdoors built in, and people want to, like, a lot of government places want, like, backdoors built into, like, different types of things, just so they, you know, that people can't send encrypted messages and whatnot.
Oh, okay. I see what you're talking about. Because, like, I was about to say, the government uses cryptography on a daily basis.
Oh, absolutely. Everything does. Like, it just, that's how the world works. And that's why I think it's hilarious when, like, you hear senators or some representative make some comment about the idea, oh, terrorists used this messaging app that had fully encrypted messages, and we couldn't intercept them, so they did their attack. It's like nonsense. It's the same thing. It's like they just don't have an understanding of it.
Yeah. Joe, it would be really, really difficult to cash out into fiat every single trade. That would be incredibly difficult to cash out into US dollars for every single trade, because a lot of currencies can't even be traded with US dollars. A lot of currencies have to be traded with Ethereum or Bitcoin. But yeah, I think I'm going to wrap up tonight's discussion with this point, because I feel like we've covered quite a bit this evening, and I wanted to talk a little bit more about the market, but I think I'm going to wrap it up with this. This is a really hard-hitting subject, and I don't want anybody to feel like their opinion doesn't matter. Your opinion matters just as much as mine does. And even if I disagree with you, I will still respect your opinion. And I think that's one of the beauties of this community. There are a lot of free thinkers out there that have different opinions than me, and that is totally okay. I am totally okay with accepting defeat as well sometimes. I'm not always going to be right about everything, and that's completely okay. We're always learning, we're always educating, we're always teaching new things and learning new things in this space. It's an emerging market. There's still very much to learn about all of this, and it's important to know that you're not always going to know everything about this. There's still so much for me to learn about cryptocurrencies as a whole, and I appreciate everybody's input on these subjects. So, guys, thank you so much for attending tonight's live stream. KJ, Tutrock, Jake, I really appreciate you guys here. Thanks for adding your input to these conversations. Everybody in chat, thank you so much for your inputs as well.
Yep, thanks for hosting.
Thanks.
Do you guys have anything else to say this evening about the topics we discussed?
Hang on. I think there's still a lot of dips and ups on this roller coaster ride in the next few weeks.
Absolutely. KJ, did you have any closing statements?
I was just shocked yesterday at the way that Ethereum pushed down while Bitcoin rocketed. I was very surprised at that move. That is not what I anticipated to happen at all.
Absolutely. Tutrock, you got anything left to say, dude?
I enjoyed the second episode of Game of Thrones.
Absolutely, man. I'm really excited to watch Game of Thrones this weekend. All right, you guys. Y'all all have a great weekend, and I hope to see you guys next week. HODL. Hell yeah. HODL those coins, guys. I'll see you guys next week. Clayford08 out.